Harvey and Valerie Looney had been brutally murdered where they worked at the Pizza Plus restaurant.
I was worried about their son, Christopher.
The number of leads was mind-boggling. We were looking at a very viable suspect.
In a restaurant, you have many mixtures of DNA profiles.
The lab results that came back was inconclusive.
After a few years, the case did go cold.
The detectives had the idea to have an expert interviewer come down.
There's no doubt in my mind that this is the killer.
We knew this may be our last chance.
If it went down the way you said it did, you're guilty of murder.
Pizza Plus, and I found the manager laying in a pool of blood and her husband's laying out the back door.
Okay, you need to get out of the store and I don't want you touching anything, okay? Is it husband and wife?
They both work here. Valerie Looney and Harvey Looney.
Harvey and Val Looney were both killed. You could see a lot of rage in the assault. The crime scene, it was really violent.
2 victims. One was inside the store in the kitchen area. The female, Valerie Looney.
Her whole head was almost cut off.
And her husband, Harvey Looney, was located just outside the back door. It looked like he had trauma to his head. His neck was cut. It was almost as an afterthought, just to make sure he was dead. It wasn't a quick death for Valerie. I mean, she had all kinds of defensive wounds. I can only imagine the fear and terror she went through.
I was the first responder on the scene at the Pizza Plus murders. There was quite a bit of blood around the victims. I actually had to step into some of the area where the blood was. After you see scenes like this, you just want to go home and grab your kids, hug them for all you got.
Pizza Plus normally close around 11, 11:30, and the murders that happen around that time of night.
They're closing up, the money bag's gone. We're looking at a possible robbery.
Some of the typical crimes in Tazewell County are drug-related crimes. So when this happened, my first thought was that it was someone coming in robbing money for drugs.
Valerie was the friend you wanted forever. When she found Harvey, they were perfect. I mean, perfect for each other. They always made Pizza Plus a place you wanted to go because you were treated like family.
Harvey was a real good friend to me. He always had a smile on his face. He was the pizza delivery guy. My wife would call Pizza Plus. The first thing she'd say was, "Is Harvey working?" They'd say yes, and she'd place her order. Even though you was dying for a piece of that pizza, it was always worth the wait to sit and talk to Harvey.
This was such a tragedy here. It's something that's unheard of in Tazewell County.
We collected a fire extinguisher, which was used during the assault on her.
The fire extinguisher was hung back up in the correct place. Why would you bludgeon someone with it and then hang it back up? It's what people who work there are trained to do. So employees or ex-employees could be considered a suspect. There was DNA collected that was found on the fire extinguisher.
We were hoping that the DNA would maybe give us a clue of who was involved.
Police believe 48-year-old Valerie Looney and her husband, 52-year-old Harvey Looney, were killed sometime between 11:30 Sunday night and 7 o'clock Monday morning.
The day their bodies were discovered was especially poignant. March 30th, 2009 would have been the Looney's 29th wedding anniversary.
Life's been hard since she's been gone. All I'd want to hear is her laugh.
I guess it's harder to believe because things like that didn't happen in our area. It was safe. And all of a sudden you wake up one morning and one of your best friends is gone. I'm not gonna see him in his little car delivering no more. I'm not gonna hear his laugh, because that's all gone. Just like you turned off a switch.
I knew Harvey and Val both. A lot of us deputies and officers would go up and eat in the evenings at Pizza Plus. So we kind of take it kind of personal, you know. We started doing interviews of anybody who could give us some insight of who might have done this. Pretty much interviewed anybody that worked there.
Harvey and Valerie had one son, Christopher Dean Looney.
I was worried about Christopher because both of my parents had been killed. I don't know that I could have functioned.
One thing that we heard during our investigation is Harvey and Chris were very close.
They loved Chris. He would come to the house when he was little, sweetest child in the world.
Christopher was contacted and came to the scene. He was very quiet.
We decided to bring Chris in for an interview. Chris lived with his parents, and he had worked at the Pizza Plus restaurant previously. Maybe he can provide some information and kind of point us in the right direction.
Chris, I want to be the first. I appreciate it, I really do, that you sit here and talk with him. We're just trying to get some direction here. And, and we realize the emotional attachment here because it's your family, so we're going to treat you right.
On the 29th of March, that's when this occurred, okay? Your mom and dad's closed and you knew they were working at Pizza Plus. You end up falling asleep watching TV or something, is that right? You go to bed, you get up at 6 to be at work at 7. Mom and dad ain't there. Why would you not call or be concerned over that?
I know Dad had told me, a couple of weeks prior that it was their anniversary and they were probably going somewhere.
And you don't know of anybody that would want to do that to them?
Not that I know of, no.
It's a small town. No one knew if this was going to happen again or if it was an isolated incident, and it really set the community on edge. We needed to find who killed Harvey and Valerie.
And you know Adam, he's a detective for the sheriff's office here.
Most everybody who lived in Tazewell County had been interviewed thoroughly.
Some of the lab results that came back was not what we were hoping for.
In a restaurant that is accessible by many people, you have many mixtures of profiles, you have people touching things. The tests weren't able to differentiate very many DNA profiles.
So the lab result was inconclusive.
The investigation was very frustrating for the investigators. A lot of information was coming in, and when that didn't pan out, these other leads would come in. Those tips would be followed through, and it was just a cycle. During our investigation, we found out that there was an insurance policy on Harvey and Valerie. Chris had a large sum of money coming in from the death of his parents. This could be the motive.
So we've got to find that out. So Chris was called back down for an additional interview.
You ready? How about sitting in that chair? Can you turn your cell phone off for me?
There's usually 2 people in the room to try to assure the best outcome of it. One of us to listen, and the other one, you're doing the interview. Agent Savard came in. He is very, very proficient at doing interviews and interrogation. So we interviewed Christopher together.
You were home that night. You fell asleep, but at 1 o'clock, they still weren't home, and you went to bed. Woke up the next morning, they weren't home. But you never called to see where they were. See, I'm just giving you things that make it look bad for you.
Right.
All right?
Yeah, I understand.
Can you explain that to me? I mean, were you working at the time?
Mm-hmm.
How much you get paid?
He was right at $13 an hour.
You're poised to get a lot of money out of this. Right? Okay.
How much money are we talking about?
$260,000.
$260,000.
$250,000. That is a tremendous amount of money.
See, now, the people are going to say you got a motive.
Are you curious whether your mom and dad suffered? Give us something. Show us you care.
I don't know nothing to tell you.
Many of the call-ins and leads are from jails.
He told me he do actually to kill her.
He agreed to wear a wire.
This operation might be very dangerous.
Who was there at Pizza Plus?
We were either going to make the case or break it.
Police believe 48-year-old Valerie Looney and her husband, 52-year-old Harvey Looney, were killed sometime between 11:30 Sunday night and 7 o'clock Monday morning.
It's just something that you think will never happen in your lifetime.
Hal and Val were honest, down-to-earth, hardworking people. They got their biggest joy from helping somebody else. Who would do this to them?
Harvey and Valerie had one son, Chris. He had a large sum of money from his family's insurance policy, so we interviewed him.
How much money are we talking about?
$260,000.
$260,000. See, now, the people are going to say you got a motive.
I mean, I'm not wanting the money because it's going to go to the girls.
So, did you go to work that morning?
I did.
Where?
Dateline.
What do they make?
Center block.
At the time of the murder, he said he was back home.
I had received a text message while I was at work asking me what was going on at Pizza Plus.
Why didn't you try to call your parents? I mean, they got a regular phone, right?
Got cell phone.
Business phone, and they got cell phones.
Right.
Did you try to call?
No.
And there's the problem we have right there.
He's the only child. Would he do something like this to his parents?
Are you curious whether your mom and dad suffered?
Yeah, I am.
How curious are you? You never asked. That bothers me.
We suspected Christopher being part of this. He just didn't act quite right.
This is what bothers me about you. You're cold. You're even cold right now. Chris, I mean, these are your parents. They're dead. Is this the way you are in real life?
Yeah, it is.
So as long as a person's cooperative, you just stay with it. Try to draw emotions out of him by making him mad.
Don't you care?
I do care.
How bad?
Real bad.
Give us something. Show us you care.
If the person's being truthful, there's only so much the person can take before you get either a reaction that they're not going to cooperate or they're going to get mad. And he never did. You're still sitting here and we're looking at you and you're not asking us why. You're not asking us why we ain't looking at somebody else.
I don't know nothing to tell you that I haven't already told you.
We did suspect that he was not being truthful. But a suspicion won't let you hold somebody. You have to have some physical evidence to determine, why you're holding this person.
When Christopher got the insurance money, he was more worried about the insurance than he was, anything else. And I said, Christopher, please tell me you didn't have anything to do with this. He said, how can you look at me and say that?
Chris never left my radar. I didn't want to slam that door. I would always keep tabs on where he was at, who he was with, and let him know that I knew where he was at.
We suspected him, but you don't just focus in on that. You try to keep an open mind, but you also have to look at all the other people who might have been involved.
The community didn't have patience because the community was scared. They know that there was a killer out there. They didn't know if it was their neighbor or somebody walking the road, the person who lived up the road, down the road. Everybody was just scared, and they wanted answers, and the law enforcement couldn't give answers.
I would call the Tazewell County Sheriff's Office sometimes 3 to 4 times a week. It was, we haven't found out anything.
I'm not a detective anymore because of cases like this. Police officers don't talk about these cases with their family, and they have to keep it bottled up inside. I did lose a lot of sleep worrying about it. So it does affect you.
Pizza Plus owner Daniel Morrison still deeply saddened by the Looney's deaths. He's offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in this 2-year-old murder case.
When the reward was offered, there was a lot more tips come in. Some of them were anonymous, but most of them weren't because they wanted to tune into the money.
The number of call-ins and leads or information was mind-boggling. Many of them were from jails or inmates at local facilities. James Casey was an inmate. A fellow inmate was talking about specific details of the Pizza Plus.
He said, I know about it.
He personally knows about Pizza Plus?
Yeah, he said he knows about it. That's all he said at the time. I said, what do you mean you know about it?
David Matheny?
Yeah, he was David Matheny. He told me he did actually the killer. But he was in on when it was planned, yeah, when it was conspired. I think I can get every name that was involved in it.
He identified what inmate he was talking to, and Casey agreed to wear a wire until we could capture that conversation with David Matheny.
This operation might be very dangerous. You never know, the other inmate could have a shank. We're close by in case they figure out that he has a wire on him.
Who was there at Pizza Plus?
Me, one of my friends, was outside. Right when I was getting ready to close down, and that's when I went inside.
How bad was it, buddy?
Yeah, the girl, she didn't die or something. She was just over there like,
holding her
her
hand.
head just went back over there and did it again.
Oh, hit her second time?
Yeah, like a pool of blood.
Start draining out.
Yeah. And then I got a hold of myself, and I was like, make sure you touch anything, wipe that down, don't get caught on this.
Now that was a good moment. He said specific details of the Pizza Plus crime scene. If he didn't do it himself, I think he was involved. We were looking at a very viable suspect.
We'll just cut right to the chase, okay? You tell us what you know about Pizza Plus.
I just know what people told me.
We've got you recorded talking about it. You're a principal in the first degree on this. If it went down the way you said it did on these damn transcripts, you're guilty of murder. It's capital murder because it's more than one person and it's robbery. That's capital murder. You know what you can get for capital murder?
There's two things you're gonna get in capital murder. What do you think it is?
Life and death.
That's it.
Now, you come clean and you tell us what all went down.
He was a small guy, and I wouldn't have put him in that type of crime.
I told you, yeah, I told only one person.
But I've been wrong before.
Harvey and Valerie Looney had been brutally murdered at the Pizza Plus restaurant.
About a year and a half into this investigation, an inmate got a conversation on a wire from this other inmate, David Matheny, making admissions to those murders. We were hopeful.
Now, you come clean and you tell us what all went down.
I told you, yeah, I told only one person.
Who?
James Casey.
What'd you tell?
I told him that I was there with other people, but I kind of felt intimidated because he was like, well, I killed a bunch of people and all that.
March of '09, where were you?
I was on house arrest at my house.
Well, that was with the ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
Making admissions and putting him at the scene of the crime are two different things.
You're telling me you had nothing to do with it?
I had nothing to do with it.
No direct knowledge of who did it or anything?
I said what I remembered off TV.
If I was confident that he wasn't involved, he's the weakest kid on the block. I think he was just kind of trying to keep his jail persona up. It was very frustrating.
Time had gone by, there was no new information. Over the course of the investigation, just a little less than 200 people were interviewed about the case. There was always that red herring that just never panned out. More or less the community as a whole had just given up hope.
I go by Pizza Plus, and I just expect Val to be standing outside the door waving at the traffic. I miss her every day. On the marquee every year, on the anniversary of their death, they always put up, "We remember." This has been unsolved too long.
You know, it's sad, because there was no justice for Harvey and Valerie at that time.
I was elected sheriff and took office January 1st of 2012. After I took office, the top priority was bringing a resolve to the Pizza Plus murders. The murder of Harvey and Valerie Looney was the only unsolved murder out within the county. I put together my command staff. I promoted Neil Turley to captain so that he could start overseeing the whole detective division.
It was a challenging task. I was told multiple times that I would never solve it or it would not be solved. But being told that you can't solve it is definitely a drive for me.
I took a picture of Harvey and Valerie and put them on the front of my case file. My idea is I'm working for them, and I want their family to have some resolution and be able to move on.
Detective Hall spent a lot of time going back through the case history and crime scene with me and the other detectives. When we go back and look at all the leads, the history, all the interviews that was done, everything still kept making a circle right back around to Christopher Looney.
Still, we had no evidence to speak of. It was decided that we were going to try and re-interview Chris to get at the truth.
The detectives had the idea to contact someone from the Reed School of Interrogation and Interviews to see if we could have an expert interviewer come down to make sure that this interview was done properly.
I've conducted close to 20,000 interviews, and I have trained thousands of law enforcement officers. In the last couple of years, my specialty is cold case homicides, because a lot of people have done some really good work and they went cold. And I want to see if I can breathe some life into the iceberg. When we come into an investigation, we sit down with the investigators and we go through the case file.
The one thing that stood out was that Chris had been arrested on that day of the murders. He had some court fines and costs that he had not paid related to a driving offense, that if he didn't pay these fines and costs, he would more than likely go to jail. When we dug deeper into Chris's background, we found that Chris had had a history with borrowing money from the family, and he wouldn't save money, he always bought things. Chris always had to have the best of the best. He needed some money, and in the end, he got the insurance money. He had the motive to do this type of crime.
Here's somebody who doesn't have an alibi, who has always said he was at home by himself watching TV. The day that someone said something has happened to your parents, he never questioned what happened. He never made any phone calls, no emotions.
After Rich reviewed everything, he agreed with us that Chris had the motive, the opportunity, the means, and he felt like that we were on the right track.
I always keep an open mind. I have to determine, is this person a suspect based on the facts and based on the behavior that I see in the interview. I interviewed some of Chris's family just to try to determine what type of individual I'm dealing with. So I talked to Chris's ex-girlfriend.
So I'd like to ask you some questions about Chris. How did you guys meet? Tell me a little bit about that relationship.
At Pizza Plus, we worked together.
How often would he borrow money from Mom and Dad?
Every time that he had spent his paycheck and there was something due. I had a really good relationship with Harvey and Valerie even after Chris moved out. Then maybe 3 weeks to a month before this happened. And they came down to see their granddaughter. Harvey and Valerie told me that he came to Pizza Plus and said that if she didn't let him borrow $800–900, that he was not going to let them see their granddaughter anymore.
I think this was getting to a point to show he was someone who liked money, who needed money, and do anything to get it.
It kind of stunned me. I mean, Chris, don't use my child for your own gain.
We need to get Chris to come in to get at the truth. The anxiety really ramped up. We were either going to make the case or break it.
That I got was $245.
So how much you think you got left?
I'd say $125,000.
He lied about that. I'm having a hard time believing you're not involved in the death of your parents if you can't tell me the truth about what happened to the money.
They were the kind of friends that everybody should have. But I was waiting, and it was so hard. Please, find who did this. And I hope I live long enough to see it.
Christopher Looney was the top suspect in the murders of his parents. He wanted to speak to some people that were very close with Chris so that we could be ready to interview, to interrogate, and get Chris to tell truthfully what happened that night.
So I talked to Chris's ex-girlfriend to find out the truth about what happened to the money from the payout of the death of his parents.
Now, did you know about the life insurance policy?
The only thing that had ever been said about that was I asked Chris about his daughter's college fund. He tells me her name wasn't on that check. He didn't have to give her a dime of it. That's his daughter.
So your daughter never got any money, or you never got any money?
No.
I don't know if this is the truth. Sometimes you have a lot of finger pointing at family members, but I'm wondering if what Chris tells me might be different than what they think. Now, before I talked to Chris, the next thing I knew I needed to do was talk to Chris's girlfriend, Elizabeth, in jail.
Chris's girlfriend got caught driving with her license suspended.
I drive on a suspended license because I don't have the money to get the classes.
All right, let me ask you this. Chris has quite a bit of money. Why doesn't he pay it for you?
Chris is out of money.
All that money?
So we did not handle the money right. We lived hand to mouth, literally.
This money is not being saved. He's going through this money like water.
He's been questioned by the police a number of times.
I didn't think he was actively being looked at still. I don't think he could do anything like that. Not with the amount of sadness that he has over it. You know, he's cried for him in his sleep before.
What I have to try to determine is, does what Chris tells me match what she is telling me?
We made an appointment for Chris to come to the sheriff's office for what he thought was just another formal interview. He said, sure, no problem.
Knowing that this could be the last time he would willingly talk to detectives did put a lot of pressure on everything we would work towards.
The night before the interview, I stayed awake all night until it was time to get ready and go pick Chris up. We're going for broke because we had no physical evidence to speak of, so this pretty much was our last chance.
We tried to guard against a false confession. I try to keep an open mind, and I try to go into an interview neutral with the belief that this person is not involved.
To start off the interview, Mr. Byington and Captain Turley went into the interview room. Myself and our command staff and prosecutors were actually watching from the next room.
What do most people call you?
Chris.
Is it okay we call you Chris?
Yes.
I never go into an interrogation without doing a behavioral analysis interview first.
How would you describe your physical health?
Good.
How would you describe your mental health?
Good.
It's a non-accusatory interview to determine the truthfulness of a victim, witness, or suspect.
Do you have how many children?
2.
And what are their ages?
One's 10, the other one's 2.
I have to know what it looks like when you're telling me the truth before I can ask the more in-depth questions.
What were the total of the insurance payouts on your parents?
That I got was $245.
So how much you think you got left?
I'd say $125,000.
He lied about that. We both know you're broke. It's only when they start to tell me things that don't line up with what we know that I start to think, okay, this person might be involved. I'm having a hard time believing you're not involved in the death of your parents if you can't tell me the truth about what happened to the money.
Since the payouts, tell me things that you purchased that cost more than $1,000.
I bought 2 vehicles. I bought an ATV, bought some tools.
Anything else?
I bought another ATV, and then I bought a side-by-side ATV.
Wait a minute. This money is not going to the kids' education. It's being squandered. You look at it and, hey, who is really benefiting by the demise of their parents? And it was very clear. The one person that benefited more than anybody else was Chris. This is starting to come to a conclusion. This is the guy. So I'm going to confront Chris.
Let me ask you, were you involved in their murder in any way? What we're investigating today is the killing of your parents.
Christopher Looney came to the sheriff's office, and this could be the last time he would willingly talk to detectives.
Let me ask you, were you involved in their murder in any way?
No.
You worked at the pizza place where this crime took place.
Yes, I did.
Correct? Did you know where the fire extinguisher was located in the restaurant?
Not right off, no.
I'm setting up what's called a bait question.
Did you ever handle that fire extinguisher that was in that restaurant?
Not that I know of.
The fire extinguisher at the Pizza Plus restaurant was used to bludgeon his mother. We were kind of positive that the suspect was wearing gloves because there was no DNA on the fire extinguisher.
Even if the person was wearing gloves, you can still leave DNA at the scene. Do you realize that?
Captain Turley is watching, and he told me he thought he could see Christopher's heart almost coming out of his chest.
Yeah, there's a thing called touch DNA. Even though I'm wearing gloves, if my arm brushes against the counter, let's say, I'm gonna leave skin cells on the counter. Is there anything you'd like to change your answer to?
No.
Okay, I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna step out and review some stuff, and we'll be back.
Okay.
Okay?
After the interview part was over, while Chris was having lunch, we were back in the training room going over the strategy so that Mr. Byington was ready to go back in now for the actual interrogation.
You all right?
Good.
This is where the anxiety really ramped up. We were either going to make the case or break it.
All right, like I told you, I've interviewed lots of people since I've been working on this investigation.
We start out with what's called the confrontation.
And there's no doubt you caused the death of your parents. I want to sit down and talk to you for a few minutes, all right?
I think that kind of shocked him.
You could tell that Christopher was kind of closed up through his body language, not wanting to give out a lot of information.
I've got another DNA swab off the fire extinguisher coming back from the FBI.
This was a bluff, but yet Chris didn't know that.
Even in the interrogation, the Supreme Court says that you can lie to the suspect as long as it doesn't shock the conscience.
You and I both know that that DNA is going to come back to you. Does what I'm saying sound logical?
I do.
What's that?
I do.
No, a lot of people have told me basically Chris is a good person.
You've got to give a person a reason to want to tell you the truth. And one of the ways you can do that is with a face saver.
I can tell you of hundreds of situations where a guy acts out and he does something he did not intend to do. And that's you. And I want to be able to show that.
I do.
What Chris didn't know is that we had his girlfriend here in the office. She had been locked up a couple of days prior, but we had her come over here.
I talked to Liz. You know where she is right now? Where do you think she is?
Over at the jail.
I took her out of there. She was part of the building. My girlfriend told me, you cry yourself to sleep at night. She believes it's because how much you miss mom and dad, and that's probably true. But you're crying for yourself, for what you did. I'm right about that, aren't you?
I don't. That I know of, I don't cry while I go to sleep.
Tell you what, how about this? How about I go to your girlfriend and I tell her that your DNA is at the scene, which you failed to tell her. And then what she's going to do, she's going to bolt. So if you want to continue to lie about everything, the door's open. You're free to go. You've been free to go since you walked in. Because if I keep hearing the story, I'm going to figure you don't care.
I'm offering him the way out. If he's truly innocent, when you offer the person the door, they take it. And he didn't. And all that did was confirm for me, this is my guy, I'm on the right track, I just have to keep going.
Where's the $128,000? I don't have it. I know you don't have it.
I'm increasing some of the emotional pressure by getting a little closer. Truthful people will not allow you to get that close to them.
I don't think you're a bad guy. I'm telling you, I don't. But you gotta take responsibility here, son. You gotta help your daughter. You gotta help Liz. I know you do. She loves you. She wants to stand by you, but she needs the truth.
Rich is starting to become not an adversary, but a sympathetic ear.
Tell me what happened. Did you over there to borrow some money, Chris?
We're tiptoeing right on the edge, and it's just one word can either make the interview go forward or it can just end it. At any moment, Chris could just say, I want to leave, and that would have been it. We were just practically holding our breath.
Christopher, look at me. You need to talk to me. Tell me what happened. Okay? Christopher, you need to talk to me.
I think Chris was getting close to saying that he actually committed the murders of his parents. Being a father myself, it's scary to think that their child could get to that point, to cross that line, to murder them. It's chilling to think about.
Tell me what happened.
Everybody jumped up. What exactly did he say?
Did he say it was an accident?
There was no way that brutal killing was an accident, but the fact is he made that first step and he admitted that he did it.
Calm down, we're not through this yet. We needed to try and get him to open up about what happened.
That's an admission, it's not a confession. Once you get the details corroborated and it's vetted, that really indicates that this is the person. I brought in Captain Turley for the confession because he was at the crime scene.
When I did go back in, it did cross my mind that he would stop talking. But I was confident at that point he wanted to finally tell us because I think it was really starting to be a burden to him. You tell me about what time you went down there?
About 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Okay.
That's when we started arguing.
What started the argument?
Just money.
The interrogator cannot lead the suspect. That would be something that would invalidate a confession. What we like to do is ask open-ended questions.
What happened after that?
That's when I got on Mom. Cut her.
It bothers me that I'm sitting there beside someone that killed somebody just for pure evil. It was all over money. After you cut your mom, where was your dad?
Well, he was hitting me then when Mom fell. He took off running out the back. I just chased after Dad and grabbed him from behind, choked him, and then we fell. And that's when I went back inside to make sure Mom was not moving. I hit her with the fire extinguisher.
He starts to tell us things that only he knew that we were going to use to validate the confession.
Things that he talked about matched up exactly with what autopsy reports showed us. He told us things that had not been released to the public that no one would have known except the person who committed those murders.
What did you do with the fire extinguisher?
I'll put it back.
Put it back where?
Where it was hanging. I went outside to make sure Dad was gone.
Okay. Okay, what happened? What'd you do to your dad then?
That's when I cut him.
Where'd you cut him?
In the neck, too.
Okay.
He's discussing the murder of his parents like some people would describe changing the oil in their car. He shows absolutely no emotion whatsoever.
At that point in time, we were taking notes, we were making calls. We knew that we had him at that point.
When we're out of the room, he puts his head down on the desk. If he's showing any emotion, I think it's for himself.
After he confessed and we got our statements, we brought Chris's girlfriend into the room. Then very quietly, he told her, you know, that he committed the murders.
Oh my God. Oh God.
I can't imagine her emotions knowing that she's been living with a man, sleeping beside a man who had murdered his parents in the way they were murdered. Right after Chris Looney confessed to the murder of his mother and father, he was placed under arrest.
At this time, you're under arrest.
And he was charged for their murder and was immediately taken over, processed, and put in the jail.
Chris decided he wanted to take a plea that he would serve the rest of his life in prison if the Commonwealth didn't seek the death penalty. And I think justice was served in the fact that he'll never see light of day.
And his parents, they were vindicated. At least everybody has some sense of closure. I'm glad he didn't get the death penalty. I want him to think about his mom and dad every day.
The investigators handled it in a correct way. I think they ought to be commended.
These two hardworking people that just love life were never forgotten.
I had spent, several years of my life working on this case, and as I was packing it away, I kind of felt a sense of accomplishment, but yet there was always that little bit of sadness to be murdered by your own flesh and blood, your only son. That is just a travesty.
And it breaks my heart to think the last image she had was of her son as he took her last breath.
Harvey and Valerie's legacy would be they love to give to everybody. And it takes people like that to make up this community.
I don't think anybody will ever have the life that those two had. They were amazing together. They were amazing.
For more about Criminal Confessions, go to oxygen.com.